In the second half of Unit 5, we're going to be talking a lot about volume, and the first shape that we're looking at volume of is cylinders. So here we go. We're going to use the first activity here to review the area of a circle, and that's because the top and bottom of a cylinder is a circle, and we're going to need to remember how to find the area. So remember from last year, the area for a circle is going to be area equals pi times r squared, with r being the radius. The radius is half the distance across a circle. So over here on this circle, we can see that the radius is 4. And if I'm finding the area of this circle, I'm going to plug that 4 in for r. So I'm going to have pi times 4 squared. I can see that as an option on my list. That is one way to write the area for this circle. But I could keep simplifying this. 4 squared is 16. So I could also write this as 16 times pi, which is that option right there. And then lastly, I can approximate pi to be 3.14 or just even 3 for this approximation, which gets me 48. Or I know it's actually going to be a little bit more than that because pi is a little bit more than 3. And so I'm going to approximate that to about 50. So those are 3 different ways to write the area for that circle. Lastly, if the circle is 49 square units, what would its radius need to be? So my area is pi r squared. So what number needs to go in for r so that I have 49 times pi? Well, I know that if I have pi times 7 squared, that's going to be the same as pi times 49. And so I know that my radius here is going to be 7. The main thing to remember when you're finding volume of cylinders are these 2 steps here. You're going to find the area of the base and then multiply that by the height. This works the same for rectangular prisms too. So in A, the area of our base, 8 times 2, would be 16. So the volume of the entire thing would be 16 times your height, which is 3. That would be 48 cubic units. For B, the base has an area of 16 pi because the radius is 4. 16 pi times a height of 1 is going to be a volume of 16 pi cubic units. And then lastly, cylinder C, it has a base area of 16 pi, that's the area of that circle, times its height of 3. So that's going to be a volume of 48 pi cubic units. One thing to keep in mind here is that we are going to keep pi in our answers. We do not need to multiply that out by 3.14. It's actually a lot easier to just leave it with pi in your answer. The next thing in lesson 13 is just practice drawing the radius and the height on each of these cylinders. I've done the first one. Go ahead and do the rest and then move on. Now we're going to work on the volume of this cylinder here. First thing it says is to shade the base. Here's the base of my cylinder. And it's showing a diameter of 10, which means the radius, I'll label it on the top, is going to be half of that, which is 5. So now go ahead and try A and B, and if you're ready, try C, and then start this again. To find the area of the base, I plugged in 5 for my radius. 5 squared is 25, and I just left my answer as 25 pi. Again, I'm not going to multiply by 3.14, just leave it as 25 pi. To find the volume of this cylinder, I'm going to take the area of the base, which was 25 pi, multiply that by 4, and I'm going to end up with 25 times 4 is 100, or 100 pi cubic units. There we go. I've sketched the silo that goes along with part C, and now we're going to find the volume of that. We already know that to find the volume, we need the area of the base, which is a circle, so that's pi r squared, and then we're going to multiply all of that by the height. So we'll plug in what we know. We know the radius is 3, we know the height is 18, and I end up with pi times 9 times 18, which gets me 162 pi. Now, if I did want to multiply by 3.14, I would end up with 508.68 cubic units, or cubic feet, sorry. Now on to lesson 14. We're going to be working with cylinders again and finding dimensions of the cylinders. To start this one off, they gave us a cylinder that has an unknown height, and we're going to find a possible volume for it. So I'm going to start out by writing my volume formula. I suggest you write that down every time you do a volume problem, and then you plug in what you know. My diameter is 8, so the radius is 4. And again, we don't know the height, so we have to leave that as h. So if I simplify, I have pi times 16 times h, or usually we put the number first. So it'd be 16 pi times h. And we have to leave it at that. We can add the label centimeters cubed. Here we have a similar problem where we don't know the height of the cylinder, but we do know the volume. They're telling us it's 50 pi. So I rewrote it over here, and again, we're going to try to figure out what is the height of the cylinder. I'm going to simplify. 5 squared is 25 pi times h, and we are trying to figure out h. If the height is 2, then 25 times 2 is 50 pi, which makes both sides the same and makes the equation true. So the height has to be 2. To figure out the radius of this cylinder, I'm rewriting the problem. I know that the volume is 36 pi, and I need to get both sides to be the same. I'm thinking to myself that 9 times 4 equals 36. And what number squared is going to get me 9? It's going to be 3. And if I keep simplifying this, I can see that I would end up with 36 pi on both sides my equal sign. And so my radius has to be 3. This table is really good practice in using all the dimensions of a cylinder and figuring out volume. So we're going to do the first 2 rows together, and then you will try the rest of the table. So here we go. If the radius is 3, I know my diameter is twice that, so that's going to be 6. Area of the base I know is pi r squared, so I'm going to plug in 3 for my r, and if I simplify, that's going to be 9 pi. And we're just going to leave pi in our answer. Then to find my height, I'm going to take the area of the base times my height, and that's going to equal my volume, so that's going to be 45 pi. Next one, the diameter is 12, so the radius is going to be 6. Area of the base would be pi times my radius squared, which is 36 pi. Now I need to multiply that times my height to get my volume. My volume is 108, so 36 times what gets me 108? That would be 36 times 3, so my height is 3. So keep on working through the table with this and then check the answers when you're ready. Here are the answers for the table, and the biggest thing here is to make sure you ask questions if any of this doesn't make sense. And if you haven't written it down a few times already, write down that volume of a cylinder equals pi r squared, that's the area of the base, that circle, times your height.